The latest update did a lot for binding vows. Not only did we get a new one, but we got reworks of pretty much all of them that changed how good each one was a ton. My old list from very long ago is no longer irrelevant in the slightest because of this, and so I thought reworking that list would be a good idea. Before we talk about auto binding vows though, make sure to subscribe so that you're up to date on anything going on with JJS. And now, let's get into the video. Starting with the worst binding vow, it's overtime. Overtime is by far the worst binding vow in the game because it gives you a pretty hard debuff while giving you a buff that you'll almost never use. It stayed in the middle in my previous tier list, back when a lot of the other binding vows sucked, because most of them had some hard drawback and low benefit that made them bad, like Never Again only allowing one use and giving a pretty mad damage boost. Now that the other binding vows are actually good, overtime kind of falls a bit as a 15% damage boost in the second half of a fight, in exchange for losing 10% damage in the first half, is horrible. Inherently, it isn't amazing. You always spend more time in the first half of the match than you ever will in the second. And honestly, most matches tend to not go on that long unless you're fighting someone who's insanely passive or running away, or you're fighting an extremely equal match where both of you are just actually doing a decent job of not getting hit, or both people just suck and can't combo properly to deal damage. It's very rare that you're going to get any kind of huge benefit out of this, and while the downside is sort of small, it does exist and will add up in a lot of cases where you have to win another interaction in neutral to kill your opponent. It's quite literally just a straight debuff on yourself, because in any fight, good luck making it to that halfway mark naturally without running for the hills. Taking a gamble is my second worst, but it's actually pretty good, just not consistent. A 20% damage boost in exchange for losing one random move each respawn is how it works. It really is a gamble, and while it can be good if you sacrifice a mediocre move, it's also very possible that it screws you over hard. If you're using Yuji for example, you can lose Manji Kick, and while it'll suck, you should be okay. Or you can lose Divergent Fist, which also isn't huge. But if you lose Curse Strikes, you just lost your 25 damage nigh unavoidable ragdolling move, and you've gimped your whole moveset hard. It also screws up combos badly if what you lose is a combo extender, and while Never Again gives you everything before taking it away, plus a bigger damage bonus that means you can do a ton of damage right out the gate before you fall off, taking a gamble either consistently screws your damage output, neutral, or a million other things depending on what move you got locked out of, or you can get lucky and you're alright. It's way too RNG dependent, and also character dependent, for me to call it good. Sure, if you play Hikari or Mahito, and you lose Reserve Balls or Soulfire, it's a free damage boost, but the risk of an actually good move like Shutter Doors or Focus Strike getting taken away that makes your stock kind of a dead one right out the gate, unlike Never Again which gives you a period of strength at the start where you can easily kill whatever you fight, is too big. It's a fun one, not a strong one. Enchain is sort of odd. The best way I can describe it is a win more button, which is not great, but it's still pretty damn good in some certain scenarios. If you get Awakening first and your opponent doesn't know one of those insane one-shot combos with Mahito or Megumi, then you can use Enchain, run away a bit, and then spin back on your opponent with Awakened Sukuna. It's hard for them to kill you because most characters don't have that kind of damage output in 12 seconds, and you always heal up to full. Plus, it's Sukuna, one of the best awakenings in the game, which is even better if you're using it to replace a bad awakening like Choso's, removing one of your core weaknesses. However, there's a reason I call it a win more button. If you use this while your opponent has awakening as well, they can awaken right back, and pretty much every awakening in the game has a damage output to kill you effortlessly. You can never use this thing to turn the tide of a bad battle with that full HP heal. All it can ever accomplish is letting you awaken a lot more easily so that you can stomp whoever you've already been stomping on. That's why it's squat in the middle of the tier list. True Love is surprisingly really good after the updates, and it deserves third place, though it is also risky. It gives you 30% more ultimate gain, but in exchange, you're forced to ult the moment you get it, and when your ult runs out, you die. This is a change from before where you could ult whenever you wanted, but you also drained ult on every move use in Awakening. True Love in general is pretty character dependent, with it getting better the stronger your character's ultimate is, and worse the weaker your opponent's ultimate is. Think about it this way. With True Love, you either need to kill your opponent twice before you die, or make sure you finish them off by that point if you want to get any value out of it. So, what you need is an awakening that can kill things and kill them fast. On Gojo, for example, this thing is cracked, because Gojo's ultimate is cracked. You get your ult way quicker, meaning you also get to lapse blue maximum people to death way quicker, and running out of ult is barely a problem, because Gojo's ult can kill people so quickly that getting 2 kills in a single life is pretty much child's play. However, if you run this with someone like Choso, and to a lesser extent Todo, they kind of get screwed over a bit, because they do benefit from more awakening gain since they consume it a lot, but Choso still runs a high risk of entering into his awakening if you can't drain it quick enough, in which case you just lost an entire life for nothing, because his awakening of True Love enabled is really just gonna kill you while getting you 0 value. While Toto doesn't care enough about swaps for something like this to be worth it, and his awakening might struggle to get the kill before you die, since his close range makes him a lot easier to stall out compared to other characters. It's very character dependent at the end of the day, and how good it is depends on what exactly you're using. But if you aren't being ridiculous and pairing it with Grasshopper Curse, it can make fights a very easy win, since you can get an overpowered awakening to end the fight way before your opponent can awaken to fight back against it. Never Again is second place. In a single update, it went from being one of the bad binding vows, which was still usable, but definitely nobody's top pick if they're tryharding, to something that might actually be one of the best. What Z's buff did to it was increase the damage buff to 35%, and also let you use each move twice before it goes on cooldown, which is insanely good if you use it right. Why? Simple. In Ranked, everybody is limited to 3 lives in 1v1s and a shared 4 in 2v2s. The goal is to kill the guy against you 3 times before they kill you 3 times. With that 35% damage boost, your combo damage skyrockets. Whereas you normally have to combo someone about 3 times to kill them, you can cut that down to 2 with some characters, and if you're using a high damage character like Gojo, or know the high damage combo for characters like Megumi or Toto, then that gets even simpler in that you just need to bait Ragdoll cancel, and then you can one-shot whoever you're fighting against. Hell, if you're fighting a Squishmallow like Yuji, Megumi, or Kogai, then it really is just one combo most of the time. After they respawn, you can do this again, albeit maybe to a lesser extent if you used a move in neutral once, to still do high damage. Pair that with a few M1s, and you'll probably be taking 2 stocks before you get into that useless state where you only have M1s, but that's still amazing, and you do it quickly too, whereas the other guy has to win 3 or 4 interactions to kill you. All you gotta do is tag them once or twice. It's a seriously huge advantage that makes up for the high drawback, and even a drawback isn't that bad, as well as being able to be circumvented by just awakening. Sure, you might have no moves if you use them all up, and so your damage isn't great in that case, but you still have your 35% damage buffed M1s, which you can use to whittle down your opponent's health to make it way easier to kill them when they respawn. Generally, you end up trading 1 life for all 3 of your opponents, which is really good. It's a super underrated binding vow, and while yes, it can be bad if you move spam and end up wasting everything, that's just bad play in general. As long as you're using your moves to do high damage combos, the binding vow is great. It's only mediocre on characters like Mahito and to a lesser extent Hikari, who rely on move spamming with short cooldowns, but it works really well on practically everybody. It's an amazing binding vow as long as you aren't spamming and know how to combo. Finally, revealing one's hand is going in top tier. I mean, you probably expected this. It's always been the best, and inherently it's going to be the best, unless something crazy broken with legitimately no downside comes out. The reason revealing one's hand is the best is because there's 0 downside to it at all, and it's a free 10% HP, which could let you tank whoever you're fighting a bit better. Sure, the upside is pretty small, you might not even notice it, but there is no downside that holds you back, unlike stuff like Never Again, where you quite literally lose your moves after using them twice. Oh, but eternally, technically there's a downside. No, there isn't. Revealing cooldowns means nothing at all. Hell, nobody even pays attention to the revealing one's hand indicator at all, because let's be real here, it doesn't matter in the slightest, and there's almost never anything you can do with that information. Oh, so you now know that your opponent has Shutter Doors and Fever Breaker off cooldown. Great. Now you know that if you get caught, you're gonna lose 45 HP. Still nothing you can do about it though. The only time at all where this actually matters in the slightest is if you're fighting a Yuji who has Manji Kick, because then you can know when it's off cooldown and when to bait it, but it's still hard to focus on the cooldown indicator in an actual fight, and if you have basic game sense or the ability to count numbers, you'll know that the cooldown is roughly 20 seconds and have a general idea of when it's off cooldown from the last use to know when to watch out for it. Knowing your opponent's cooldowns is the most useless benefit that could ever exist in the game, besides some joke like 0.1 HP or something. You gain nothing from it. You can't do anything if you do know it, and all it really does is annoy both of your screens with an extra visual element on it. The game still remains the exact same, in that both of you gotta land an M1 on each other, and then unleash all your moves. It doesn't change a thing. Seriously, 10% more HP, while small, is still far better than every binding vow when there's 0 downside to it, unlike everything else. It's the simplest binding vow, the most boring one in the game, and honestly the least fun because it doesn't even do anything, but it is by far the best if you're a boring ass metamancer who wants to win. Revealing one's hand is therefore the strongest. So, that's it. That's the Binding Vow rankings. They're by no means flawless, and a lot of Binding Vows change in strength depending on what character you use, but this is the closest I can get to an objective tier list. If you enjoyed watching the video, make sure to subscribe since it helps me out a ton. I'm Noob Eternally, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in another video. Also, I got 46 turns on Refraction Railway, and I'm not going to be beating that record because I got the exact same turn count on the last one. Have a good day, bye.